We all have moments when we're trying to figure out the answer to something, but just can't. Then a piece of the puzzle finally falls into place. I find myself in that situation a lot. But when I finally reach that epiphany, I feel accomplished. This wasn't always the case. You see, I was born in Nairobi, Kenya, but we lived in Goroi, a different part of Kenya. When I was 7, my family moved from Goroi to Nairobi, the big city. This meant that I had to switch to a completely new school. In Goroi, we were taught in Kikuyu, our mother tongue. At home, we also spoke Kikuyu. When I moved to Nairobi, everything changed. In school, we were taught in Swahili, the country's national language, and English. Having to switch learning to a completely different language was very hard for me. I had a hard time learning English, while most of the kids in Nairobi had been going through their first years learning English and Swahili. While I would go home, where we would still speak Kikuyu, I would go home frustrated, and I begged my mom not to go to school the next morning. Lucky for me, I had a mom who would not take that as an option. I eventually learned how to adapt to the languages, but it wasn't easy. This issue affects more children in primary schools in Africa than you would think. Africa is the only country where the majority of children start school using a foreign language. Ample evidence from achievements and lessons across the continent have yielded to question current practices and suggest the need to adopt new approaches in language use. I want to target rural areas in Africa where the language spoken at home is not the same as the median of instruction at schools. Picking up a language is definitely not easy. Adults often think that children will pick up any language used in school. But evidence from UNESCO's multi-lingual education-based brief shows it doesn't work that way. In many African societies, children naturally grow up with more than one mother tongue, as there are several languages spoken in the family or in the immediate neighborhood. In a continent where languages spoken range from 1,000 to 2,500, the existence of so many languages creates a problem in matters of communication and education. Although it can be a challenge to teach in multiple languages, recognizing diversity does not compete with goals to promote national unity. Indigenous languages are treasures yet to be fully discovered, valued, and used. Another underlying assumption in education is that children come to school ready to acquire new knowledge in their first known language. Only 5 to 15% of pupils know the official international language before they enter school. The communication gap between speakers of local language and the official language is very wide, which amplifies the social divide. The school system is a major social institution which fosters barriers. It relies heavily on the official language, holding it up as a standard that does not reflect the forms of the language used by the majority of the population. Schools should build on the skills and expertise in the first language as learning takes place in all subjects. The switch from one medium of instruction to another in the first 5 years can be an important factor in higher dropouts by the end of year 5. Students will be 5 times less likely to repeat the year and 3 times less likely to drop out of school. To ensure children with language barriers to have an opportunity to reach their dreams, students can be encouraged to be active and become involved with the subject matter. Comparisons of learning achievements in year 8 in African countries like Ethiopia and Niger showed that students with stronger mother tongue education performed better in all subjects, including English. Children develop a significantly better understanding of the concepts. They know more and learn far better when taught in a familiar language. The third United Nations Millennium Development Goal is to promote gender equality and empower women. Girls already tend to refrain from volunteering to answer in class to avoid being shamed in front of their classmates. If the language of instruction is unfamiliar, they are even more likely to avoid speaking. Taught in their own language, more girls will stay in school and become empowered. The strategy will first begin to educate parents about the importance of education and get them on board, increasing the number of students enrolling. They can then give better parental support to their school-aged children. The school will also mold the curriculum, learning materials and assignments to fit the group of students they are teaching. In most African countries, teachers are expected to teach students to read and to write in a language which is A, unfamiliar to the student, and B, which they have little competence themselves to teach. Consequently, both teachers and students in African classrooms face serious communication and learning problems. On a daily basis, coupled with a lack of mastery of the language of instruction, this results in a serious teaching barrier. Often teachers equate lack of intelligence or uncooperative attitude with laziness or on the part of the students. This type of attitude can seriously inhibit students and create anxiety related to learning in general. To avoid being shamed from the rest of the class, teaching practices such as safe talk can be incorporated in everyday teaching. The encouragement of chorus answers, for example, repeating phrases after the teacher, would be a great improvement. When one or more of these targets are incorporated in a school, literacy rates will increase and more of the world's population will be educated. Native speakers will also participate in lessons, which would also keep that language alive. Learners can immediately use what they have learned. Learning to read and write in the languages used at the community level activates learners. Kids will be more vibrant and happy instead of confused and struggling. If there was a school similar to this when I was going through primary school, I would have been a happier kid growing up, that's for sure. Languages are said to make us human, but for those whose languages are rendered powerless in a society where only a few languages are dominant, educational failure is primarily related to the mismatch between the home language and the language of formal instruction. In order to ensure that happiness for other children, this new strategy for schools all across Africa. Remember, an investment in education is an investment into a student's life, changing the outcome of his and her life. Thank you.